Well, study hard in school, work hard at your job, and before you know it, you will find success. It doesn't matter where you were born or who your parents are. This is America, the land of opportunity. Not sure about you, but I think it's safe to say that I'm not in the minority in being taught this fundamental lesson about this country and the ability of anyone to achieve here. Well, it turns out that's not necessarily the way things work. And now Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz has a new book out in which he argues that the inequality gap has gotten so large that the chances of those at the bottom making it to the middle or the top are even lower now than they were in old Europe. Here he is discussing his book. It's titled The Price of Inequality: How Today's Divided Society Endangers Our Future.
So the life chances of somebody from the top who doesn't do very well in school are better than somebody from the bottom who does well in school. So that really says, that your parents make a great deal of difference to your economic fortunes. We're not the land of opportunity.
So let's talk about this notion that, in the United States of America, it's not the land of opportunity that we thought it was. And to help me break this all down, I've got Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal and the director of the Trends Research Institute. Good to see you, Gerald. Let me just ask you about this theory, that the American dream is, in fact, a myth.
Well, it wasn't at one time. It is now, of course. When I was a young man just getting into the workforce, the gap between the CEO and the average worker was about 20 to 1. And now, depending on whose data you look at, it's about 350 to 450 to 1. You look at the college grads coming out. What is about, they say 53% of those under 25 years old with graduate degree, out of college, are either unemployed or working menial jobs. I mean, these are real hard numbers, and they're real hard facts.
And Gerald, you're not 200 years old. I mean, I think you make a good point in saying that these changes have really happened, just in the last few decades. Those are staggering numbers that you give, 350 to 1 or 250 to 1. I mean, that's outrageous. Something that strikes me these days, we keep hearing about, this trickle-down economics theory, that the more money wealthy people have, the more they'll invest it, and in turn improve the economy. They'll hire workers, they're the job creators, they'll buy cars and boats, which, as we know, people need to manufacture. But Stiglitz, among others, says this theory is flawed. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, look at the numbers. That top 1% that has the net worth, most of the net worth is more than 90% of the bottom combined. And so when you look at the real numbers, it's not trickling down. And you're looking at, just since the recession began, you're looking at median household income down some 7%. So no, this thing it's terrible. And it's not going to get any better. And there, again, when you look back, like you made the point, I'm not 200 years old. I got in the workforce, actually, in 1970. And this is a very steady decline, but it really accelerated over the last 20 years. And you can tie it directly into deregulation, directly into NAFTA, and then directly into it's just so obvious. This was the nation of equal opportunity in many ways. Of course, racially is a whole other story, but everybody had a fair shot, and you rose and fell on your own merits. But then something really dramatic changed, Christina. It was called too big to fail.
But too big to fail, I mean, in some ways, that's associated, at least I associate it with the economic collapse of 2008. I mean, what we've been seeing has been sort of a product of a domino effect that started a couple decades ago.
Oh, no, you're 100% right. But what I'm saying is now look at the acceleration, where they made it really clear that the top only counts and the rest doesn't. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Yes, it was going on for a long time, but it's become crystal clear. So when we look at the facts and add up the data, look what's happening again to kids that are getting out of college. They can't find jobs. Look at the people on unemployment. That's extending now, what? It's the highest, longest term of being unemployed since they've been taking records on it. So no, it's not getting better. The gap is getting wider. And by the way, this is going on in the industrialized nations around the world. You're looking at the United States in income inequality. We're ranking 93rd. 93rd in the world. Do you need any more proof than that where the United States sits?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, too, that you do mention these young people, these people just getting out of college, about to get out of college, and they were taught the same thing that I was, that you were, that if you work hard, you know, you'll find a job. And they probably weren't thinking that job was at, you know, a fast food restaurant. Let me ask you this. President Obama has been catching a whole lot of flack lately for something he said. Let me play a small part of his speech on the economy from last week.
As I said, we've created 4.3 million jobs over the last 27 months. Over 800,000 just this year alone. The private sector is doing fine. Where we're seeing weaknesses in our economy have to do with state and local government.
So a whole lot of people are, you know, criticizing Obama. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that line in, you know, opposition campaign ads where he says the private sector is doing fine. But guess what? I mean, I think it's safe to say the private sector has fared better. You know, and you were bringing up some of these numbers, but in the last 30 years, national income, when we talk about income, the top 1% has doubled. The top 0.1% has tripled. Meanwhile, median incomes for American workers has, you know, stagnated. So talk a little bit about, I mean, do you think President Obama deserves the flack he's getting for saying the private sector is doing fine?
Well, again, you know, as you mentioned, median household net worth is down some 40% from, you know, 20 years ago. Look, it was a slip-up. His teleprompter wasn't on. It's just a presidential reality show. You're going to hear Romney slip up as well. It's all, you know, they say that politics is show business for ugly people. So this is just one episode on the presidential reality show. Yes, it'll be a soundbite every now and then, but it's all going to come down to near the end of the campaign, and that's still, you know, a number of months away, and a lot could happen between now and then, and that number will be, you know, forgotten, because really, what is Romney going to come up with? So it's a battle of the losers, and, you know, the better of the lesser of two evils will win.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to say, I mean, that any part of the economy is doing fine, but certainly the private sector isn't doing terrible, I think it's safe to say. Let me ask you really quick, though, I do want to bring in China to this. Various reports show that about 3 million U.S. jobs have been wiped out just since 2001. This is a result of the growing U.S.-China trade deficit. You know, less being exported, more being imported. And out of those jobs, more than half are jobs in manufacturing. Gerald, is there a way to break this pattern or at least slow it down of these large corporations shipping these jobs elsewhere?
Well, it is starting to change because wages are going so low in the United States that some of those jobs are being repatriated. You know, people forget when China was anointed into the World Trade Organization. No one was paying attention. It was right after 9/11. It was in September of 2001. They would have been screaming and yelling about China getting in, but people were you know, they weren't clued into it. And yes, could it change? Go back, a lot could change. If you put back in place things that worked before, that made America the most egalitarian nation on earth, rather than the gap between the rich and the poor being the widest of any of the industrialized nations. Put back into place the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Robinson-Patman Act, the Glass-Steagall Act, and of course, pre-NAFTA. Yeah, you could bring everything back. But what's the deal? You know what it is. It's take your money, your manufacturing, bring it to a slave labor country, bring the product back and mark it up. So as long as we have that kind of formula, no, it's not going to work. And to pick up on your point again, yes, the private sector is doing well when you look at corporate profits. And why are corporate profits so high? Because the people aren't making anything.
That's true. A very, very good point, and that's going to continue to play a major role in the direction of this economy, I think. Out of time for now, but Gerald Celente, publisher of Trends Journal and director of Trends Research Institute, always good to have you on the show.
Thank you.